You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. Today's episode is basically a 2-for-1. You're getting 2 Ultraman Florida race recaps, both of which fit under the title of Age Less, and an Ultraman Arizona race preview, including an athlete and profile whose story you will definitely want to hear. My next guest became the youngest person to complete Ultraman Florida at the age of 20, and he celebrated his birthday at the race. He is a biomedical engineering student at Georgia Tech and is joining us today from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to the podcast, Jacob Beldick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really excited to have you on. It's not that often that we have these young people in the sport that are coming out and taking it on. So first, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your schooling. Biomedical engineering sounds pretty hard. What do you hope to do with that when you finish your studies?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in like the startup world, entrepreneurship, that kind of thing. So I'm looking more into like med tech startups, that kind of thing. So I actually have something of my own that I'm working on now and hoping that that takes off. But like, we'll see. I'm also pretty interested in certain R&D areas too. So still trying to navigate things. I'm still in my second year. So
yeah,
just trying to figure things out.
Okay. So are you looking at like Neuralink and stuff like that, or does that interest you?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of those projects are really cool. There's definitely a lot of issues with it, but it's like the overall idea I think is super cool. And I honestly don't know too much about them.
Oh, yeah.
So that's definitely something I need to learn a bit more about. But most of my work has been in like the tissue engineering side of things. And then I've also got a bit of a background in EMS. Like I got trained as an EMT last summer. So working on that.
Okay. As I was saying, with you being as young as you are and having your birthday at the race, that must have been pretty cool. You went from 19 as a racer to 20 at the awards. Is that the awards day? Was it your birthday?
Yeah, it was the 17th. So I was actually the entire race. I finished the race. I was 19. It was just like the perfect way to cap off, teenage years.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then immediately the next day, the celebration day, also just happened to be my birthday.
Yeah. Did they sing happy birthday for you?
And I actually don't remember. I got a bunch of happy birthdays. I'm not sure. Yeah, it was just a really cool experience though. I think, Jen let me carry the American flag. I don't know if you saw the videos, but just in the ceremony at the end, it was awesome.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And when did you decide you wanted to do Ultraman? I mean, at 19 years old, most people don't even know it exists. Most people don't know about Iron Man. I know that you did one Iron Man prior to this. What kind of got you into the sport in the first place?
So actually, it wasn't even like triathlons or ultra triathlons in general. It was ultra running. That was originally where I got my start. I was 18 when I did my first ultra, and I just got really into the persistence aspect of it. And that's just something that for me has been always a really big thing, just the mental toughness, the persistence aspect. I think a lot of the skills and like the mental capabilities you learn from it, they're really useful for just applying to life in general. Because at the end of the day, everything that you're going to do takes hard work and persistence. So that's where I got my start. And then after my first ultra, I ended up learning about Ultraman. And then probably around late February, early March of last year, I was like eyeing the race. And then I ended up making the decision to apply about a month later once I got everything sorted logistically.
Yeah. And previously your ultra running, you had done a 50K. Which race was that?
That was the mental health ultra in Noonan, Georgia.
Okay.
That was it was such a great race. I went into it so unprepared because I had and I still don't have a coach, but for that race, I knew nothing. And it was just every race I've done, including Ultraman, has just been huge learning experiences for me.
Yeah, it's a tight learning curve because if you don't learn quick, then things are going to go off the rails real fast for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your race at Ultraman Florida. You had a swim of 5:09:23. My understanding was it was quite choppy out in the water, and some of the kayakers weren't necessarily able to pull a straight line. How was your swim?
Yeah, my swim it was pretty long. I ended up doing, according to my watch, about 8 miles. So it was a bit longer than the standard 10K.
Right.
And, I definitely don't think it was all my paddler. I never swam with him before. So I also didn't really know how to line myself up well. And like you said, it was really choppy out there. So it was a pretty difficult swim. I did not anticipate being in the water anywhere near that long. I was pretty sure I would be under 4 hours, and I was actually aiming for closer to 3:30. But like I ended up swimming a lot longer than I thought I would. So I wasn't too upset with my time just because my pacing was really good. It's just I was swimming all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, did you have enough nutrition on board for 5 hours if you weren't planning on being out there that long?
Yeah, I actually it was my paddler. He convinced me to just have just a little bit extra. And I was like, I planned on only having 3.5, maybe 4 hours. And then I ended up having up to 5. So towards the end, I was definitely getting close to being low on nutrition, but definitely like I made it out fine. And I was feeling pretty good after the swim, despite being in there so long. I wasn't really feeling too tired or anything like that.
That's good. Good. And have you ever done that distance before?
No. I mean, the farthest I'd done before that was probably about 5 miles.
Okay.
And then, from 5 to 8 miles, it was a big jump there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got out and you got on your bike and you were pushing the time limit a little bit there at the end of day one. Your bike was a 6:42:36, which gave you a day one total of 11:51:59. So like 8 minutes to spare on the day. I know your parents were your crew. Is that right? They must have been worried about you out there trying to beat the clock.
Yeah, it's very nervous. But actually, for a while, it looked like I was going to be fine. What really was the kicker was about 5 miles left in the bike, I ended up getting a flat. And it just so happened that, JB, the bike tech, he happened to be right around there. So, like, almost before I get off the bike, like, there's already people trying to help me. So that ended up really saving me. But that flat right there ended up costing me, I think, at least 10, if not 15 more minutes. So, I mean, still cutting it close, but not as dramatic of a finish. But then the flat just really set things over.
Oh, yeah. So with that was like a big pit crew going at it then? Everybody's jumping in trying to help out and...
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool to see. I was extremely tired then, so I was not really in the best state to go in and like be changing everything because I was so close to the finish. I almost actually changed my bike because I had a backup bike and I wasn't sure like how much time I had exactly because when you get to the finish you can see the timer and it's also nice, but when you're actually out on the road you don't always have the exact idea because by then I was having trouble with my watch and I didn't really know exactly where I was at time wise.
Oh, okay. So all the things were conspiring against you, the technology of the watch and the bike. So going on to day two, you got the big bike ride again. I looked at that time when it came through. I was watching online and it was like, oh, this guy likes the dramatics. So you were an 11:57:40 on day two. What happened on that day? Was it just a long day or did you have other things going on?
During that bike ride specifically, my bike seat was basically broken. Actually wasn't sure if I was going to be able to ride that day because in the morning, like my saddle broke right around that mile 85 when I was having that issues with the bike tire, and I just like got on the bike and I just kept going, but I could tell like the saddle was like moving as I was on it, and I was like, this doesn't feel great, but got 5 miles, I'll just finish it. And by day two, things were like it wasn't looking good. They ended up being able to do some kind of temporary fix. I don't even know what they did, but the exact positioning and height of the saddle was a bit messed up. So I'm riding there and I just like the entire time, my lower back was just killing me. It was probably like the most intense pain I've ever felt in my life. And it was just persistently lasting for, the whole almost 12-hour ride. And then I got another flat actually on that day too. So that definitely contributed to the time. By the end of the day, I was just very happy to make it. And a funny thing is, I actually thought I had a lot more time than I did that day too. I had at least 20 minutes left because by the time I got to the top of Sugarloaf Mountain, it looked like I was going to be finishing around 11:30. At least that's what I was thinking based off of what I could tell. So what I actually did then is, I mean, it sounds stupid in retrospect, but I ended up pulling things back a little bit because I was like, okay, I don't want to, because I was like, at that point, I was destroying my legs pretty much, just trying to get to the finish. And I was like, okay, I'll scale things back a bit. It looks like I'm going to be fine. And I didn't want to like kill my legs because I knew I had a double marathon the next day. And then like I realized I completely miscalculated things at the time. My crew's talking to me and they're like, you got 15 minutes, like you gotta go. And I wasn't really sure if they were messing with me or if they were being like dead serious. I thought it was a bit of a joke at first, but good thing I took it seriously and really kicked up the pace for the last 15, 20 minutes, because if not, who knows if I would have finished. So
Right. And was it your parents that were your crew? Was it mom and dad? Or did you have other people?
So for originally it was just gonna be my parents.
Yeah.
And for day one, that's all it was. But Mike and Sandy Morrissey, I don't know. They're affiliate. They were both involved. Like I think Mike's done the race. I think he's done like 5 different Ultramans or something. And they ended up helping me and joining us after the first day because they saw my parents were having a bit of trouble out there crewing me. So Mike ended up taking over and helping me out for day 2 on the bike. And Sandy ended up coming and helping me out on the run. It was really more helping. I mean, I guess it was helping me out too, but it was also helping my parents out just with the logistical aspects because neither of them have any experience with ultra running or triathlons really. So, or crewing in general. So that was definitely something that I think was really helpful.
Yeah. It's nice when the people come in and they recognize that, you know, it's nice to have your family there, but if they don't have any experience on how to crew, those 11:57s and 11:51s, they could have easily gone over 12 hours just by making a few mistakes on their end. So yeah, nice of them to come and help you out.
Yeah, that was really big. I mean, again, like I had no idea if I would have finished the race if it wasn't for them. They were a huge help.
Yeah. If you were listening to the Ultraman Florida race preview show, we were actually discussing this very situation at one point. I've pulled out a little clip for it in case you missed it. At the beginning, it's Steve Keller talking about how this is not necessarily a sport for younger people, but that they can definitely pull it off. Here's that clip.
Yeah, it's definitely not typically a young person's sport. You tend to see majority of the athletes 40 or over, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. And you have to lean on other people, I think, and the experience that that they can pass along, because there is some tactic for anybody who's doing an Ultraman for their first time. There's definitely some tactics to be successful and make sure that you get through it in one piece.
Yeah, and it looks like he's bringing his mother and father for the crew. So we'll leave that at that and see.
That could be super awesome.
Yes.
It could be super awesome.
And that, of course, was the voice of race director Jen McVeigh with the positive vibe saying that is going to be super awesome for him. It was obviously a great thing for him to find that extra help. And when he was pushing the time limit the way he was, we are looking ahead to day 3 in the next part of our conversation. He has never run a double marathon. So I was wondering, how confident was he going into that he could make that time limit? Okay, so let's get on to run day then. Your previous 50K race, I saw you did that in 7 hours and 18 minutes. So were you confident that you were going to be able to finish in time? I'm guessing never run a double marathon. You're not really sure. How was your confidence going into the run day?
You know, funny enough, despite everything the past 2 days, I was actually extremely confident on the run. I was, even during it, I never really had a moment where things didn't look like I was going to finish. Like I always knew that I was going to be able to. And like, I think a big part of that is, like you mentioned, the 50K, my time was, you know, a bit over 7 hours. I don't know if that would make the pace for it. I think it might, but it was definitely cutting it close at that pace. But on that race, I had so many things that I learned, like I didn't know anything about like managing electrolyte levels, or really like I was not eating enough on that race either. So like I just learned so much just from the pain, the experiences there. So I knew I was going to do a lot better than I was then. And then during the race, there really was only one moment where I wasn't really sure how things were going to go. And that was because I ended up going off course towards the end, like right in the last, I think it was like 5 miles. I ended up going in just over 2.5, maybe 3 miles off course.
Oh no.
And that was like right towards the end too. Yeah, that was brutal. And then by the time I get back on course, my watch actually died at that point. I'm not really sure how, but so at that point I have no idea what time it is. And I had a pretty good feeling that I was still going to make the time just because I built up a pretty sizable buffer by then.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished, I had a bit over half an hour left, I think, if I remember correctly. But that was probably the only time I was really having any concerns. But even then I wasn't too worried.
Yeah. Yeah. Your day 3 time was 11:27:41. And you weren't the final one of the day so you get to shake that one off. That gave you a total time of 35 hours, 17 minutes and 20 seconds. And that made you the final finisher in the tally at number 28. I'm guessing that you're happy just to be a finisher and you weren't really worried about your standings going into this.
Well, it's a mix. So at the end, I was just extremely grateful to finish because, obviously, like you saw all my times throughout the race. But something I never really mentioned, and I actually didn't mention to pretty much anyone before the race, was I'd actually taken the last 3 weeks right before the race. I basically didn't train at all. I was having some health issues, and I ended up getting cleared for the race. I think it was the Monday or Tuesday before the race started. It was like right before. And I up until that point, I was like, if you asked me a week before the Friday when it started, I thought there was no chance I was going to be able to run and just do anything in the race. So just being there was just incredible. I was so grateful to be there. And then the fact that I was going to be able to finish it was so amazing. Even though I was pretty far off from the time I wanted, I mentioned the complications and other stuff, but there was also just, I'm sure, like taking a few weeks off training like that can definitely get you a bit out of shape, especially because like I was doing next to zero like training just because I was really hoping. I was just betting everything on the idea that maybe I'd be able to recover in time.
Right.
And yeah, that was pretty much the goal. And I was really happy the way things went. So I was just extremely grateful for finishing.
Mm. And what was it like with your family crossing that finish line and hearing Steve King announce you across the line? Was it what you thought it would be? Did you have no idea what to think? What went through your mind at that time?
It was really amazing. It was definitely one of the best moments of my life. I was so grateful for being able to make it there, especially that far too. Because like I just said, like a week before, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to start the race. Right. And the fact that I was crossing the finish line, just after everything that happened throughout the race too, it felt so amazing. And I was so grateful to make it there. And then a few minutes after, my attention immediately turns back to the race and to the only finisher who had a more dramatic finish than me on any of the days. So that was an amazing thing to watch too. That was just an amazing thing to watch the finish and just watch everyone rally together just right there at the end with everyone going running to get her and to help pace her get back.
Yeah, that was Jen who beat your mark by coming in at 11:58:21. I can only imagine what it was like to have all those people running her in. What a fantastic event at Ultraman Florida this year. So Jacob, I know that when you are out there doing these races, you start thinking about your time doing them and maybe some of the problems you're having. But there's also a lot of people that do it for a cause, and that helps them to get to the finish line as well. I understand you have a cause that you were racing for.
Yeah, I was running for Save a Child's Heart. I was trying to raise money for them. And the organization is basically focused on raising money to help children with heart defects all around the world, specifically in areas where they're having trouble getting access to healthcare. And that's just been something that's been near and dear to my heart. And my family's been involved one way or another for few years now. So just out there raising money for them, it felt amazing. And it felt really great to represent them out there on the course.
Oh, that's great. That's a great cause. And maybe one of these days you can help them as well with some of your biomedical engineering of tissues and hearts and things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. So now you've turned 20 years old. You've got an Ultraman under your belt. You've got Ironman under your belt. You got ultra running was their thing you wanted to do. What kind of events can we look forward to seeing you doing in the future? Are you going to go back to ultra running, or do you have more of a triathlon bug now? What's coming up?
It's a bit of mix of both. I really want to do a 100-mile race, like running. So that's probably what's going to be next for me. And then also, like, I definitely caught the ultra triathlon bug because, it's something else. I don't really know how to explain it, but that's something I think I'll also be getting back into. But I think probably I'll be doing the 100-miler next. That's probably what's going to be up next.
And do you have a particular one that you're targeting?
No, not right now. I'm still working out the logistics and details because I'm pulling my training schedule back a little bit because I'm trying to focus on a few other things that I've got. Like I mentioned the startup earlier.
Right.
Like that's something that I'm trying to put a bit more time into because while I was getting ready for Ultraman, obviously the vast majority of my time outside of those last couple of weeks before the race, the vast majority of my time is going into Ultraman or my school. So like definitely just trying to even things out. But the 100-miler is definitely something I'm looking forward to. And I'm super excited to start like ramping up my training for.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm happy to see that there's young people like you taking up the sport, and hopefully you tell all your friends to come and join you on one of these things. Thanks for coming and giving us the debrief. Now that we had the youngest person to ever finish Ultraman Florida, congratulations once again on your finish.
Thank you so much.
Hello, listener. I love getting your feedback and suggestions for the podcast. Keep them coming at 515ultraman@gmail.com. For those that want to help me promote the show, I suggest that you tell a friend to listen too. Word of mouth is a great way for podcasts to get new listeners. And if you don't mind publishing your feelings, a free way to support the show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app. It's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Finally, if you're so inclined, you can show your appreciation for my work by clicking the support link at the bottom of the show notes to go to my Buy Me a Coffee page. Thanks for all of your feedback and support. Now back to the show. My next guest is another finisher of the 2025 Ultraman Florida and the new record holder for the 60 to 69 age group. Joining me from Tampa, Florida, welcome to the podcast, Dougin Walker.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks for coming and sharing your experiences with us. I was looking through your past race resume and noticed that you have quite a few things that you've done. You've clocked in at least one Ironman every year since 1987. Is that correct?
No, actually not. I've done at least one triathlon every year.
Oh, one triathlon.
Since 1987.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done at least one. And I really only took up Ironman much later than that. My first real Ironman was Kona in 2004. I got in the lottery back when there was a lottery.
Yeah.
And, it was a great experience. I wanted to do Kona for years and years. I think most triathletes want to do Kona at some point.
Yeah.
And then I was like very satisfied with that. That was the only one I was going to do at that distance. And then I met my current wife, Jill, about, I guess I first met her like 14 years ago or so. And she was really into Ironman. And then eventually she convinced me to do some more. And now I think I've done 77.
77.
So.
And have you done every Ironman that there is in existence right now? Is that correct?
Yes. Jill and I have both done every single one. There's a club that they call the club of about, I guess there are 5 current members of the club that have done. This year there were 35 different Ironmans full distance in the world.
Yeah.
And there's 5 that have done every single one. And and two more that we still think as members of the club. They had done every one at some point in the past, but have not done at least one of the recent ones that have been added.
Okay. And so is that kind of what you and Jill do now? You just look at what the new races are that are being added and put those on the calendar?
Yeah, that's the first thing we put on the calendar at this point. We just joined the club this last September when we finished up Korea in September. So, at this point, we first look at the new ones, and then we add more races because Joe likes to do a lot of Ironmans. So
that's great. So that you can do this together. And I saw that you guys actually got married on an Ironman course. Like, you guys really love Ironman. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I'd say Joe really loves Ironman. I'm just along for the ride. But
okay.
We decided we'd get married, and that seemed like the natural way to do it for us somehow. And so, it was in Cozumel in 22, and we did one loop of the bike course, stopped and got married, and then finished the rest of the race. So I say the run was like our reception. We had 1,000 people at our wedding reception because it lasted a long time too. So we did pretty much that whole race together. That was pretty cool. We had a little bit of a worry because it turns out there's only one guy that does weddings on Cozumel Island, and he was leaving that afternoon. So we had to get there by a certain time to get the ceremony in. And then the race got delayed. So we started half an hour late. So we're like, anyway, we did make it. We got it done. It was pretty cool.
And did you have a wedding party that was racing with you as well? Or did they just step in from the side of the road, or how'd that happen?
Well, we stopped at, I don't know if you know the Cozumel course at all. It's 3 loops, and the start is out away from town, but the finish and the transition are right in town there. Yeah. And as you finish the loop, you turn back on kind of the main road along the beach, and there's a place called Cozumel Palace, which is where we were staying, the hotel. And all our friends that were there were just staying there. Right. So we just stopped there and just had the wedding out right outside the hotel there.
Oh, that's excellent. And I'm guessing that's not when you had your best Ironman, though, which also happened in Cozumel. Because when we did the preview show, I was looking up times and stuff, and I saw that you had a 10:10 listed in Cozumel. I'm guessing it wasn't that one.
It was not that one. That's correct. I think that might have been the year before that.
2021.
2021, yes, the year before that
I looked up, and it was actually not even a 10:10. It was a 10:08:54.
Okay, yeah. I remember that race. I was really hoping that once the swim went really well, because there's always a current in your favor at Cozumel, not always, but almost always, and it was especially strong that year. So the swims were very fast, and the wind that typically is very hard on the bike was pretty easy that year. So I came off the bike with a much faster time than I expected. And I thought, okay, I'm going to, really run a great marathon. Maybe I can break 10 hours, which I'd want to do for a long time. But I kind of slowed down the second half of the marathon, but still did my best time. It was still a good race.
Yeah.
But the conditions were really, really perfect. Very, very lucky day that way.
Or maybe it's a little bit different for you when you're at your Ultraman race, because I understand that was a very windy swim as well. Some of the paddlers were drifting. I was speaking to another athlete, Jacob, earlier, and he was saying that he swam 8 miles. You clearly didn't do that. You got out of the water first in a time of 2:38:31, 14 minutes ahead of Ryan Toner. Was it your wife who was kayaking for you, and how was she able to hold that line so well for you?
She did an amazing job. Yeah, it was Jill who was kayaking, and it was wavy, but she just doesn't get bothered by things like that. And she's very strong kayaking. She'll tell you, actually, she's been doing a lot of rowing on her Peloton rower machine, and she thinks that helped as well. But she held just a great line. I just had to swim, and basically she was out there, and I just went. And as far as it was a little wavy, but for me, I mean, I'm very lucky, especially in the triathlon world. My swimming's just very good for triathlon, and the conditions just really didn't bother me. So I thought that was a very nice swim.
Yeah. And what was that, faster than you were expecting, or where you were wanting to be? Like 2:38, that's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to judge because, again, you never know the conditions, and open water, you never really know the exact distance. So
Right.
I was thinking in perfect conditions, I could go about 2:30.
Okay.
So 2:38 was definitely. I was very satisfied with that. It was a good start to the race, and it's a long race. You can't you can't go for your fastest swim possible. You need to save some energy for the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you got out and got on the bike, you were the fourth fastest bike on the day as well. You did a 4:44:33, which got you to the finish line in 7:23:04, which had you first overall on that day with a 17-minute lead. Was there anything that happened on the bike out there that stood out to you?
No, not really. It was, I think, again, because I'm a swimmer, I just have an advantage on the bike in that the swim hasn't tired me out as much as some people. So my bike was much better the first day than the second day when everybody else was coming in kind of equal. But it was, it's 90 miles. It was long, but it wasn't too bad. Mm. I felt pretty comfortable that day. I really thought that coming off that, I was very happy. No one had caught me. I'm used to being caught on the bike, but I usually don't have as big a lead on the swim because it's not as long a swim.
Right.
So it was fun to stay in first for a full day. It was I was surprised at that, but it was great.
Mm. And you were talking before about your wife is really into Ironmans. I saw another one of the events that you did, I guess event I'm calling it, is that you did 6 Ironmans on 6 continents in 6 weeks and all under 12 hours. So this is clearly a feat that probably takes a lot of planning and things like that. What gave you guys the idea to try and pull that one off?
Well, that was actually a friend of ours suggested to us when we started doing a few more Ironmans. This is probably back in 2017 or 18. We had a friend that said, it'd be really cool would be to do all 6 continents in a year. And we said, wow, that would be really cool. So we put the schedule together back in 2019 that we actually had the 6 continents in 6 months. And we told our friend, and he said, that's great. Go have fun. I'm not doing it. and so Jill and I went off, and that was our quest. And I know I've always really liked putting together these complicated, goals for myself. Mm-hmm. It just helps keep me motivated, and it gives me something else. And I kind of like the planning aspect of it,
right?
As much as doing it. Sometimes I kind of plan it out. And I'm like, okay, I know it's doable now. I don't have to actually do it. I got the planning done. So we did that, and we were pretty impressed with ourselves, that we gotten that done. Right. And then we also were trying to get to all the different ones in the world along the way. I mean, it was going to take a few years, but we wanted to be in the club we talked about at the beginning.
Right.
And so we kept kind of watching all the races, and then with all the COVID changes in schedules and stuff, the races were at different times of years, and they kept moving them around. And all of a sudden, I was just looking at the schedule, and I saw those 6 races were lined up 6 weeks in a row.
Oh, yeah.
On all 6 continents. And I'm like, this may never happen again. It may never be possible to do this for somebody to actually do the 6 Ironmans, 6 separate races sanctioned by Ironman in 6 weeks on all the continents. And let's do it. I mean, it sounds crazy,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just one of those things that we figured we can do it. So why not try?
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah. And it seems like those are the kind of things that you like to do. I noticed, I think it was in your bio that when you were in university, you won a big math competition. So I'm guessing you just have that kind of brain for logistics and planning and putting pieces together. Is that it?
Yeah, I guess I'm usually pretty good at that. Yeah, in college it was a math. Actually, the team won a big competition. The team I was on, so I didn't win it personally. But yeah, I was on the team that won or tied for the national championship one year in a math competition. So a little different from the athletic field. But yeah, I kind of enjoy this planning, seeing if these things are possible, getting my spreadsheets out and listing all the events and, figuring out what possible challenges you can put together. And what the fastest way to do them is and stuff like that. And sometimes it gets a little tiring, especially when you have to actually plan all the travel and stuff like that. But it's kind of part of the challenge. It's part of the interest of the whole outing.
Right. And I'm guessing that's what probably drew you to Ultraman as well, because it's more than just a swim, bike, run. There's a lot of planning, and the crew has to do a lot of that work for you as well, and keeping the crew vehicle organized and things like that. So it sounds like you and Jill have this kind of relationship where that's all going to work out for you. With day 2 on the bike, you went out there and you did a 9:15:49, and you were second overall after day 2. I guess Steve Keller had caught up to you and passed you at some point, and he got 17 minutes on you there. And there were 5 people under 17 hours, all kind of bunched together. How did day 2 go for you on the bike?
I mean, it went fine. I mean, you were talking about the crew. I mean, my crew did an awesome job. I mean, it was definitely, Ultraman is a little different than any other event I've done in that it's such a team effort.
Yeah.
You're because you're not getting your nutrition stuff from volunteers along the way. I mean, the volunteers are awesome, but they're not part of your team. In this case, you're counting on your team for everything. So you need your crew to be there, and they, when you yell different orders or change your mind on what you want to eat or drink, they have to be ready to respond. It's got to be very difficult, because I know I was not as planned out as I should have been on exactly what I was going to do.
Okay.
During these bikes. So that it was great. The crew was great there. As far as that day, it was long. I mean, it was the longest of the 3 days as it turned out for me, and which is what I expected. And I not sure I say underestimated it that much, but I've done some really long bike rides over the years. I did the, I don't know if you've heard of the Paris-Brest Paris ride, which is a 4-day event. And you have to do all these qualifying rides to do that and stuff like that. That's not a race. That's just a ride. So it's a little different attitude, and you stop along the way. So I've done long bike rides. So I looked at that ride, 171 miles, and I said, I've done over 200 miles in a day. So I just wasn't that worried about it. I hadn't really thought about the fact that on all those other long rides I've done, I've taken breaks. You stop, get off your bike, go in, get some food, take a drink. So on. And in this case, you had to stop at stop signs, whatever, and get your nutrition, but you didn't take real breaks. Right. So 9 hours of riding a bike with no real break, it was a lot. It was harder than I expected. Not necessarily physically harder, but just mentally harder to keep going and keep pushing. And your feet start to hurt, and your hands start to hurt and things like that. So I was very happy when that day was over.
Yeah. And the great thing about that is then, you've gotten through without a mechanical, and then it's just up to you and your body for day 3.
Yeah. I mean, that's always one of the big worries on a bike. That's why it's always a relief to get off the bike, is you don't have to worry about something breaking down on you anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. And you've done around 100 marathons, I saw, but never an ultra. So
yeah,
were you concerned at all about the distance?
Well, yeah, I'd say the run was the thing I was least prepared for, in that as I've done longer bike rides, I've done longer swims than the 10K. And so those I had experience for. The run, I was kind of winging it some. I hadn't done a lot of special training. I've never raced more than a marathon. But I kind of figured I have such a long base, all these Ironmans I've done over the years, which, you're running only a marathon, but you're running it starting tired after a 100+ mile bike ride. So it's a little bit like doing an ultra, it's tougher than just doing a marathon as far as the endurance you need for it. And I really didn't know how it would go. I was pleasantly surprised about how well my body held up, because I was certainly wouldn't have been shocked if I'd end up, like having a speed walk the last half marathon or something, if I really fallen apart and not been able to run. But I did a run walk the whole time, give myself some breaks. Yeah. And it really held. And then again, my crew, I had pacers almost all the way, people running with me, handing me drinks, handing me gels. So it was easy to keep going when there's someone right there with you to help you along.
Who else was on your crew besides your wife?
Just three other friends from the area. So I don't know, Gail Norman. She's a very accomplished triathlete herself. Has done very well at Worlds in the Ironman. Heather, she's also done some Ironman. She's a super cyclist and I found her a very good runner too. And Patty Spence, she's actually the one person with Ultraman experience. She had crewed for an Ultraman before. Oh, so I think it was very important. I think she probably helped hold them together. Like she knew it was coming a little more than the rest. The rest of us were just kind of winging it the whole way.
Yeah. We were talking about these events or things that you do. I saw around marathons, you also pulled off quite a feat when you turned 52. Can you tell the listener about what that was?
Yeah, that was the first of what I call my crazy quests, which I guess the last one would be the 6 in 6 weeks. So I decided somewhere along the line that I wanted to run a marathon in every state, and that's not that uncommon. There's a 50 states marathon club on Facebook right. and stuff like that. So people do that, but I decided I'd do it in a year, just to make it a challenge or whatever, just because I needed something to really, really push myself and see if I could do it. So, and also, as I talked about earlier, part of the challenge was finding out if you could actually do it, if you could actually find on the schedule, a marathon in every state within a year that all fit together, because right. I wasn't like having people make races for me or anything, I just had to find races that existed and have them line up and find the states and so on. So I was going to do 51 when I was 51 years old. And then I realized that there was a marathon in Puerto Rico that would give me 52. And it was my 52nd year. So I morphed into 52 and then they ended up canceling that one. But by the time they canceled it, I already had kind of started the thing. So we added U.S. Virgin Islands. So I ended up doing 52 in 52 weeks. It also 52 weeks kind of fit, Yeah. I'm a kind of numbers guy, as we discussed. So I had 52 marathons in 52 weeks in 52 states. So it was 50 states, DC, and U.S. Virgin Islands.
Wow.
So on St. Croix. And and that was the plan. And I made it through, we ended up, some races got canceled along the way, had to find other races, change the schedule. Yeah. It was quite an event. But yeah, part of the planning, I had a spreadsheet with 350 marathons on it, checking when the dates were. I think some race directors got really mad at me, like a year and a half out. I'm asking them, when's your race going to be in, a year and a half? They're like, I don't know, but I had to plan them, because, when you're starting this thing in the year, you have to be planning the races, almost 2 years out when you start the planning,
right?
To make sure the dates exist. So anyway, and then I ended up along the way, I met some people who told me there was this club called the 50 Sub 4 Club for people that had not only run one every state, but run them all under 4 hours. Oh. So I decided to make that my goal. So that was my even better goal for the thing, was to try to do that. And I actually managed to do that. So I made all 52 fantastic. Of the marathons under 4 hours.
Yeah.
So some not by very much.
Yeah. You must have logged a lot of air miles that year.
A lot of air miles. There were definitely trips to, some places I was in the city less than 24 hours,
Right.
You got there especially when I was doing 2 a weekend, quite a few times. So you'd run one Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, you'd fly to another state or drive to another state, run the one the next morning, and then leave. Oh, yeah. So, it was a lot of travel. But at preparing for the Ironmans, because they're even worse when you're doing all over the world. Right. When you're traveling to Europe for a race or Asia for a race, it's a lot of travel.
Yeah. Well, you held a pretty good pace then for your double marathon, because it came out at an 8:32:31. So just a little over that 4 hour mark that you do in a regular marathon that you keep yourself to. So tell us about the day 3 run. How that'll come together for you.
Yeah, it went better than I expected. Again, I was pleasantly surprised. I was my kind of goal, or my A goal, was just under 9 hours for the run. I figured that I should be able to run the first one in first half maybe 4:15, and then I'd slow down and maybe be 4:45. So I was thinking under 9 hours would be good. And as I say, I did this walk run to give myself breaks, and I started with 12-minute runs and 1 minute walk and I did that for an hour. Then I went to 11-minute runs and 1 minute walk. So the runs got shorter and shorter. So it kind of allowed me to keep running when I was running at a faster speed because I got breaks more and more often.
Right.
And it just held together. And I don't know if the strategy was right or if I was just, I just had such a long base that I was able to do it. But I mean, that's the one thing. I think overall my best ability is just endurance. I just can keep going a long, long way. So I think I'm really a natural for these longer events. They're a little lonely, there aren't that many people doing them.
Yeah.
So, and usually the swim isn't as important in the longer triathlons, for instance. Right. But I think that it's just my natural thing is the ability to go for a long, long time versus to be really fast. So,
yeah. So when you put all those times together, your total time came out to 25:11:24, which was good for fourth overall. Just 11 minutes off the podium, unfortunately. And that meant that you basically destroyed the Florida record for your age group. That was held by Dan Attard previously at 30 hours and 31 minutes. And you got the new world record bettered by 2 hours and 13 minutes, which was 27:24. So did you have any clue that this record existed? Were you looking at that when you went into it, or was it just a happy coincidence that you got out of it?
I didn't know anything about what the world record was until the morning of the last day. I mean, if you'd asked me, I would have assumed there was a record, but I really wasn't thinking about it. I just signed up for this race, like you said. As another challenge for me, right. Something else to try that I thought was interesting. And then Steve King, the announcer, came to me last morning and says, Dougin, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but by the way, here's a world record for your age group. I'm like, oh, great, thanks. Now if I'm having a bad day, I can't just kind of give up and walk it in. I have to try to, finish harder. Yeah. Luckily, I was well under it, so I wasn't having to worry about that. But that was the first time I had any reason to think I was close to a world record for it. Oh, yeah. So I think part of it there probably haven't been that many people that have done this event at 60 years and older.
Right.
It's not that big an event. So, I'm very happy I got the world record. It's great. It's exciting. It's fun to have a world record. But I was really more just happy with the performance I had and how well the race went for me.
Yeah. Oh, it's a little cherry on top.
Yeah, exactly.
So what sort of things can we expect to see you doing in the future? Are you going to stick with Ultraman, or are you going to move on to your next big epic quest? And what might that be?
Well, I don't have another big epic quest thought of right now. Maybe you should give me one. So I can come up with something fun, because I really do need things like this to help myself stay motivated. Mm-hmm. That's why. So I keep coming up with ones. As far as Ultraman, I mean, it's a nice event, and as I said, I think it's tailored to my ability to just go for a long way. I think it's a good event for me. Yeah. I'd love to go and do the Hawaii course, because I think the whole idea of Ultraman is to race all the way around the island, the Big Island. I think that's just such a cool concept, so it'd be nice to do that. The problem is that's Thanksgiving weekend every year. That's a big family holiday for us. So it's a really hard weekend to get away. So I'm not sure I'll really do that. So my Ultraman, I don't know, maybe done. We'll see down the line. I know Jill wants to do one, so I'm sure I'll be at a race again at some point.
Okay.
When she gets out and does one. Yeah. On the other stuff, as we talked about, we're going to make sure we keep doing the new Ironman races as they come up. And Jill will be doing her 100th Ironman this November at Ironman Florida. So right now, that's kind of the big thing on our radar going forward, is getting everything prepped for that. And then after that, I don't know. So I need to find something to keep myself motivated, but I don't have anything specific planned right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you will. It sounds like that's the kind of thing that drives you. So, yeah.
Yeah. For better or worse, I need something like that to keep myself going. Yeah. So.
Well, Dougin, thank you so much for taking the time to come and tell us a little bit about your Ultraman experience. And congratulations again on winning your age group and your nice high fourth place finish overall.
Thanks very much. It was very nice talking.
Did you know that I have started putting some of my conversations onto YouTube? Sometimes I have to shorten a conversation for the podcast, but now I can post the entire thing. Or maybe you just want to see what that athlete you heard looks like, so you will recognize them at the next race. It's easy to get this content on my YouTube page. And coming soon, some exclusive content and other events. Just search 515 The Ultra Podcast within YouTube. The entire podcast library is there as well, which makes for a great way to check out the podcast in your own language. Just put on the closed captioning and read along. Get a great podcast and practice your English at the same time. That's my YouTube page, 515 The Ultra Podcast. And now for part 2 of this episode, the Ultraman Arizona preview. Jen McVeigh had planned on joining me again today to do the Ultraman Arizona preview of athletes, but unfortunately was not able to join me, and we could not reschedule and get this episode out on time. So she has asked me to please present the athletes on my own. First off, I have to give some major props to Jen for putting on the Ultraman Arizona race this year. She unfortunately did not have a high number of registrants, and that number has recently dwindled down further. As of recording, she has 5 participants showing up, and to her credit, she is not canceling the event. As I'm sure you will all know, that she will be taking a major hit to her pocketbook to subsidize the race for this number of athletes. And when we spoke, she was still determined to make it as special as possible and as good as any other 515 event. And she said she also expects it to be even more fun. So I'm going to introduce to you the 2 women and the 3 men taking part in the race coming up next weekend, March 21st to the 23rd. First up on the women's side is Nicole Suss. She's 30 and somewhat of a local. She's from Tucson, Arizona. And she's going to be having a little bit of a family affair at the race where her crew chief is her partner, Jake, and her father-in-law and her mother-in-law, Sid and Kim, are also on the crew. And then she's throwing in a couple of her friends, Marty and Steve, to round out a very full crew. She has completed 7 Ironman races, with her best time being a 10:07 at Ironman Maryland. This will be her 3rd Ultraman race. In 2022, she did Ultraman Arizona in a time of 28:12:56. To now, she has the 2nd fastest day 1 bike time at 4:59:49. And during that race, she became the youngest female finisher because at that time she was 27 years of age. Last year, unfortunately, was not quite as good for her. She was a DNF on the run after having a 3:15 swim and some pretty good bike times. So I know that this year she is going to be out there trying to get some of that back and get to the finish line. She has said that she has swam the distance in a pool in 2:37 this year, and that in February she ran the Black Canyon Ultra, which is 32 miles, to help train for this race. Nicole's competition in the women's division will be Suzanne Berendt Hanling. She's 49 years old from Cologne, Germany, and she's a computer scientist. Suzanne has an amazing crew with her, none other than the 2017 Ultraman World Champion Steffi Steinberg, who is her coach, along with Jerry Steinberg, who also is very experienced in ultra sports. Steffi has also raced at Ultraman Florida in the past and has also been on a 4-person all-female RAM relay team in 2017, and they hold the record at that time. Her 3rd crew member is Melanie Bauman, who was also supposed to be racing at Ultraman Arizona, but had a very serious mountain bike accident at the end of last year, and so she's coming along to crew instead. Suzanne has some good Ironman times with a 1:13 swim at Ironman in Frankfurt. At the Challenge Amsterdam, she has a 6:08 bike. And her best run time is at the fantastic race of Challenge Roth, where she ran a 4:40 in 2019. She has done ultra distance running up to 63 kilometers. So we will have to see how it goes when she gets to the double marathon. Moving over to the men's side, we have two Mexican athletes coming to the race. First is 21-year-old Adrian Campera Cueva, and he will be coming with his brother, his mother, his dad, and a friend. Now, he doesn't have a lot of ultra racing experience. So again, like in Ultraman Florida, we're going to have a young person showing up with a little less experience and a family for a crew. And hopefully he gets a little bit of extra help, just like Jacob did at Ultraman Florida. He did do Ironman Cozumel, and he had a 14:44. And interestingly, he marks as one of his achievements that he has climbed the highest mountain in Mexico. So congratulations to him on getting into the race at just 21 years of age. Our next Mexican competitor goes by the nickname Burrito, and he's trying to pull off the McVeigh double by doing both of Jen's races. And that's Ramiro Gutierrez. He's 57. He has got some Ultraman experience from the past, and he is also trying to do all 5 races this year under the Ultraman brand in one calendar year. So good luck to you, Ramiro, on that. His time in Florida this year was 32 hours and 57 minutes. He came as the 23rd of 28 finishers at Ultraman Florida. And previous to that, he has a 32-hour race as well at Ultraman Canada and a DNF at Ultraman Hawaii. So I know he'll be taking his time to get to the finish line in good shape so that he can continue his quest to try and do all 5 Ultraman races this year. And the 5th competitor is my athlete in profile for this race, and that is Andy Yergler, who's 46, and he will be telling you a very interesting story about how he has made it to Ultraman Arizona. Stay tuned. That's up next. Today's athlete in profile for Ultraman Arizona runs a food truck and a small real estate business, as well as being the founder of a nonprofit called Try Recovery, which focuses on the biological side of addiction recovery through endurance sports. Joining us today from the Hoosier State in Bluffton, Indiana, welcome to the podcast, Andy Yergler.
How you doing today, Larry?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the time to come and see us and tell us a little bit about yourself as the athlete in profile. These athletes in profile sections are usually done to make sure that people showing up at the races a little bit ahead of time can get to know some of the athletes. And you being a newer athlete to the Ultraman world, I thought you'd make a perfect subject to introduce to the Ultraman Arizona and the Ultraman crowd as a whole. So thank you for coming and introducing yourself to the family.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. And yeah, that's pretty humbling and a little intimidating as well.
Well, hopefully not. You know, these things are they're like a big family, and there's nothing to be intimidated about for sure. I think you've started to get a little bit of a feel for that in knowing your coach. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about how that's been going for you as well as we go through. First of all, can you tell the listeners where is Bluffton located? Like, how far would you be, and in what direction maybe from Indianapolis?
Yeah, perfect. So Bluffton is in Indiana, and it is in the county of Wells. There's roughly around 9,000, 10,000 people in our town. And we are about 90 miles north of Indianapolis and 30 miles south of Fort Wayne.
Okay. And Indiana is one of those states where it's kind of surrounded by a lot of major cities in the U.S. Do you have a favorite sports team from Indiana, or have you adopted one from one of the neighboring cities?
Yeah, actually, I adopted one from Ohio. I am a Cincinnati Bengals football fan. I was in second grade, and that was a year they went to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
The Icky Shuffle was very popular at that time. Icky
Yeah.
Woods, Boomer
Was that against San
Esiason.
Francisco?
It was, and that
Okay.
was the game when
I remember that.
Montana, I forget the tight end's name, but hooked up in the end zone for a last-minute touchdown, and that was one of the third worst decisions I think I made in my life, but I'm loyal and I stuck with it.
Well, good for you.
But we're having a good season here lately, and it's been fun to be a Bengals fan.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a turnaround. I know even like 10 years ago, it was like, oh, the Bengals are ready to turn around, but it took a little longer than that.
Yeah. So, in the Chicago, that's about 3 hours from here, and I always enjoyed the Cubs. So much history there, Wrigley Field. So, my life's been set up for disappointment. Bengals football, Chicago Cubs baseball, but all in all, they're always fun teams to root for.
Yeah, that's great. If you don't mind, as we set this up for the listener, I think your story best lends itself to like a chronological telling. So if we could, maybe we can kind of roll back into your life and get a little bit more about your origin story, which really isn't that unique to people that end up doing ultra sports. I think you'll find that once you get into the Ohana here, there's a lot of people that have stories similar to your own. But let's hear about what brought you to Ultraman Arizona a little bit and go back to those teenage years. Where you were experimenting like many youths with certain things. Can you tell us about what was happening and what happened as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was raised in a family. I have two siblings, mom and dad. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary. However, sometimes right there around the middle school years, the ages of 12, 13, 14, I got lost. I turned to substance abuse. My first encounter with alcohol, I was 13 years old and ended up drinking around 8 shots of vodka in about 20 minutes. And then from there, we started sipping from a handle of Jack Bean or Jim Beam. And the night just continued to go on like that. The next day, the next afternoon, the next evening, it was rough.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure there was some alcohol. Yeah, I'm sure there was some alcohol poison that took place. Came home, friends took me home, convinced the parents I was sick with the flu. But I remember going back to school that following Monday thinking that, I'll probably get made fun of and my life was going to get probably a little bit worse than what I thought it already was. But it was quite the contrary. It became one of those things where, I don't know, it was almost viewed as cool. And then at that point in my life, I just decided I was going to build this identity as a partier, have a good time. And then I also realized that alcohol also helped me numb. It also helped me self-destruct. And in a sort of like this sick way of thinking, it was like, okay, I can sort of destroy myself with this. But at the same time, hey, I'm going to be cool doing it. And so I went through middle school like that, through high school, started experimenting around with marijuana. And then once I got through high school, I graduated and I moved to Fort Wayne. And that's where I was introduced to the drug cocaine and immediately fell in love with it, became a coke addict, lived a life. I call it the worst 100 days of my life. I'm just strung out on cocaine, 4-day, 5-day binges. I was starving myself physically. The mental torment I was putting my parents through was horrible. It was a bad time of my life. I ended up developing about $1,000 a week habit. And again, this was back in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. So I'm 18 years old, and back then I didn't really have an opportunity to find a job right out of high school that would cover that kind of a habit.
No.
So I turned to dealing, and I was out of high school for about 5 months when I was arrested for dealing cocaine in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And a couple months after that, at the age of 19, the state offered me a plea agreement of a 15 years. They suspended 5 years, so ended up giving me a 10-year prison sentence. I ended up spending about 4 years, 7 months incarcerated. I turned the ages 20, 21, 22, 23 in the Indiana Department of Corrections.
Wow. And so was that just like the one time you got caught? It wasn't one of those 3 strikes situations, or were you getting arrested multiple times at that point?
Yeah, so I had no juvenile record. I didn't have any kind of problems. 3 weeks before I was arrested on the dealing charge, the possession charge was a possession of cocaine. It was less than a gram. So in Indiana at the time, we had a felony system of A, B, C, and D. A being the greatest, that would be like your murder or things like that.
Yeah.
And possession was a D felony. So they ended up rolling it all together.
Mm. And then were you in a prison with all of those various people, or was it more of a low offender type of area that you were in? Like, you're just a kid there with these adults. Like, what was your composition in the prison?
Yeah, so at the age of 19, I walked through the gates of Westfield Correctional Facility, and that is about maybe, an hour and 20 minutes from Chicago. It's the northern part of Indiana by Michigan City. And yes, that was a jungle. It was a penitentiary. It was a medium security prison. So what you had was people who had a fresh sentence and who their security risk was maybe a little higher because of, one, their crime, or two, the amount of time they had. But you also had individuals who were in there for murder, rape, some of the uglier crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But however, they've been incarcerated for 30 years already, and they're getting closer to being released. So then they would fall down into this security level as well. So it was a hodgepodge of several different kinds of offenders.
Yeah.
And then after spending 14 months there, I went to a level 1 facility, which was very minimal security, and I was there for 3.5 years, and then finished the rest of my incarceration at a work release center.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you find a way to grow as a person in that environment? I mean, your peers at that time would have been starting jobs, having their first real relationships with people, going off to college, starting whatever they're doing. And you've tripped yourself up into the prison system. I'm wondering, like you said, you went 23 in jail. Those are very formative years for somebody. How was that possible for you to survive that and come out the other side as a productive person?
Yeah, when I talk about this, I'm 46 years old now, so this is over 20 years ago. And I look back on it, and part of it is, it's pretty incredible, but at the time you're in the mix, you're in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very strong support system. My parents, they never gave up on me. And then I remember I was sitting in the county jail, and I had a notebook or a couple pieces of paper in there. And I took a pen and I sort of drew like a road. And on that road, I drew a bypass. And it was sort of like, okay, and I had this conversation with myself, like, okay, you're at a point in your life, Andy, where you can continue to do this, and this is going to be your life, or you can man up, accept what you've done, and today's the day we got to change. And, I knew I was going to be in trouble regardless. There was going to be a penalty to pay. But at the same time, I started to think, okay, I'm 18 now, but again, even, this is a small blip on the radar over the long period of life, if I have the grace and mercy to live a long enough life. And I made a conscious decision that day that, it ends now. Like, we're going to start working on this, and this is not going to be my lifestyle. I'm not going to keep coming back.
Right.
And then once I was incarcerated, I spent a lot of time reading. I spent a lot of time working on myself. There were a lot of bad like the guards. I would say that a lot of bad people, miserable people that probably should have been working on themselves throughout life as well.
Right.
But the mentally, that was probably the toughest part, was just dealing with the way you were talked to. My DOC number is 980-479, and everything you do is by that number. They try to reduce you, break you down to a number, and I just refused to ever go down that path. And it was a struggle to mentally stay strong, but at the same time, looking back on it, I think it did build a resilience, and I wanted to prove them wrong. No, you won't see me coming back here. And, and that's what they would always say. Hey, yeah, this sounds all good, but you'll probably be back. I will see you. I don't plan on retiring for another 20 years. I'll probably see you 3 more times. I mean, just comments like that nonstop.
Right. Yeah. And then when you did get out with this on your record, because I understand in the U.S. they put it right on the job application, like, have you ever been to jail and what have you been for? How hard was it to get a life started with that on your record?
Yeah, great question. So I was fortunate. My dad, he had a friend who had a successful business, and they were in the process of expanding. They were actually developing a new branch of their company, and I was able to go work for him right out of prison. So I was very fortunate and blessed for that opportunity. I would do that for a few years. I ended up going back and enrolling at Indiana Wesleyan University, and I received or earned my 4-year degree in business. And that was probably more the frustrating part, because that was the point then where the felony kicked in. And I mean, in Indiana, I had limited opportunity to get different kind of license. And this would have been around 2008, 2009. So this is when a lot of applications were starting to be done online. And I mean, I never even could get in front of somebody and sort of, share, hey, this is who I was, this is who I am. It was just obviously a default, probably, felon, kick it out.
Right.
So I ended up, went into the car business, and I was in the car business for about 6 years. Now, when you're in the car business, the bigger the felony, that's almost like having a PhD. So I say that, joking around. But yeah, so I worked for a big car dealership there in Fort Wayne. And again, I look back on my life, and these were just little stepping stones that continue to make me who I am today. And that was a very positive experience, and I was grateful for that as well.
And when you first came out, were you able to like have it turn around then, or were there relapses to your issues, or were you, fully rehabilitated while you were inside and got over the drugs and the alcohol problems?
Yeah. So when I came home, I was put on probation for 2 years. I tell people, I came home sober, but I didn't come home recovered.
Okay.
2 different things. And once I got off probation, I really never dealt with the things inside of me that led to the reason of why I always wanted to self-destruct.
Right.
And so I did pick up the bottle, and I started drinking pretty heavy at that point.
And then, well, obviously, we're talking now, you're doing an Ultraman. At some point, things turned around for you. What was it that finally, got you on track?
Yeah, so around 2010, 15 years ago, I was pretty much hitting some low points in my life, and I was ruining my marriage. I was, just not the dad I wanted to be. I knew that the way I was going, this probably is not going to end well, and I was in a rough spot, not in as rough of a spot I was when I was addicted to narcotics, but I was in a pretty rough spot. And a local gentleman, a mentor of mine, he's a local pastor here in town. He reached out to me, and he said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to Haiti. There's 4 other guys going with me. I'd like for you to go." In 2010, Haiti had an earthquake. Over 250,000 people perished in that. And so we were going to go and help out where we could. We went with an organization, All Hands, I believe it was called, and great organization. And so we go there, and we set up shop in like this huge concrete compound that was destroyed in the earthquake. We had no roof over our head.
Oh, yeah.
We slept in mosquito nets. We caught water in 5-gallon buckets. That was how we showered. I mean, it was a very interesting experience. It created a lot of gratitude. And I met other people from other parts of the world that was in this compound. There were people from Wall Street in their 30s who they came here to Haiti to help out, and they were seeking, they were searching for something as well. Life was more than just this, how much can I put in the bank kind of stuff. And
right.
There's a gentleman that went with us, and he was sober, recovered for about 5 years, and he just had a peace about him. And he and I started talking, and we're from the same area. And it was that some of the conversations, it was like, I finally broke down and just said, man, I want what you have. Like, how do you do it? How do you do it?
Right.
And we ended up talking, and he agreed to be my sponsor. He says, his name's John. He's actually going to go and crew for me out here at this Ultraman, which is awesome.
Oh, that's
we can talk about that. Yeah, my whole crew that's going, these are people that have crewed me through my entire life. Like, so it's like a lot of symbolism, which is pretty cool. Yeah. We'll be the least experienced crew out there, but when it comes to life, these people, they know how to get me to the finish line. So I'm pretty excited.
That's excellent.
But John and I, so we just sat down, started talking, and he's like, so here's the deal. I will walk with you for as long as it takes. He's like, but I got 2 rules. Rule number 1, you got to want it. When you stop wanting it, I'm not wasting my time. And he said, rule number 2, don't lie to me. And he said, when I say don't lie to me, I mean this. Don't tell me you're not drinking and you're drinking. Like, you got to be real. Mm-hmm. And he's like, if we can agree to these 2 things, whatever it takes. And, I'm skeptical. I mean, there's been other people in life who've tried to get involved. And, when I didn't go as fast or I didn't hit different goals that they had for me, that it became, well, hey, and then they leave my life. And so I was somewhat skeptical, but it was something different too. Mm-hmm. And so for 6 years, from 2010 to 2016, I bet I told him over 250 times I was done drinking. And so I would say I had close to 250 relapses.
Oh, yeah.
And finally, July 3rd, 2016, took my last drink. And it'll be 9 years this July. And through the process, hey, thank you. Yeah, and I got sober through the sport triathlon, and that's also sort of where I was able to begin a recovery. And we could talk about that later on or whatever. But
well, let's start with who turned you on to triathlon. How'd you get in?
Yeah, so I tried so many ways to get off of substances, how to deal with stuff on the inside of what I was dealing with. And finally, one day I said, you know what? I want to drink, but I'm going to go outside. I'm going to run. And that's what I did. It was sort of like a Forrest Gump moment. That's what I tell people in more ways than one. So I probably ran a mile that day. I had no idea. I never was a runner. I was about 240, 250 pounds, out of shape. I would always like to lift weights, but I hated cardio. I was that guy. And I ran and probably 45 minutes, and I thought I was going to die, but I didn't. And at the end of that run, I sort of felt good, like, wow, cool, I just ran a mile today. How many people run a mile today? I don't know, maybe not a lot. I felt good about myself.
Good.
Yeah. And then, 1 mile, 45-minute run, not a walk, a run.
That's, you got to start somewhere.
Right? And something happened that day. I didn't drink. So the next day I did the same thing. And then the next day I did the same thing. Well, in the process of that, I was taking my kids to open swims, and it was summertime around pools, and I met this lifeguard. And, I'm not proud of this at all, but this is sort of just where I was at in my addiction. But I was buzzed at times, and I'd go to the open swim with my kids, and I joke around, and I very much taught myself how to swim drunk. I never swam on a swim team. I never swam, but this lifeguard's like, well, hey, well, if I can get you to swim to the end of that pool and back, and then you go into a breaststroke, and then you swim freestyle back and forth and then breaststroke. He's like, I can get you swimming all day long. And it seemed like impossible to me, but surely enough, after about a month of doing that, I found myself swimming 75 yards freestyle. Then I go into my breaststroke, and then I go 75 in every 100.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, I'm swimming 800 yards in 40 minutes. And I think I'm on top of the world, right?
Of course. Of course.
So now I'm swimming. I'm not drinking. I'm running. I'm not drinking. I was starting to feel a little better. Then I jumped on my bike sometimes, and I go for a bike ride. And so then this whole triathlon thing enters the picture. And I start training for my first triathlon. And for about 10 months, I trained. It was a sprint triathlon in Indianapolis. And I just actually last week, I knew we were going to talk about this. So I went and looked up my times. And my first sprint triathlon was around 1 hour and 39 minutes. And that was a 10-mile bike, not a 12-mile bike. It was a 400-yard swim. But, for that day, I felt like I was on top of the world.
Yeah.
Could not believe it. Holy cow. I just did a triathlon. And that was the beginning. I got done with that race. And I thought, well, what are you going to do now? Like, I've been so focused for 10, 11 months. I'm sober. But I had nothing to really think about at that point. It was all based on that. So I thought, one of the thoughts that actually went through my mind was, I'm going to go home and I'm going to call some of my buddies. We're going to go down to a local bar. We're going to celebrate. And then I was like, well, that defeats the purpose of this. So what are we going to do here? So I came up with this idea in my head, like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a triathlon in every state by the time you turn 65. Okay. That gives you something to work for every day. You're going to have fun doing this. And I have fun. I'm not a professional. I don't, I am at all at some of these people who are in our age groups and just the athletes they are. I mean, they're just incredible. I'm 220 pounds. I'm 6 foot. I probably don't fit the mold of, a triathlete, but, I really enjoy doing them. And so I went from Indiana, I went and did one in Kentucky, another sprint. We started to swim in the Ohio River, and they said it was a clean start. You never touched the bottom. And we got to the race that day, and I'm actually knee deep in muck.
Oh no.
And then, it's like, okay, well, this is cool, right? I mean, so as I'm walking the course the night before, I see this dead possum floating down the river, and it's like, we're going to be swimming that tomorrow. How cool. I'll tell people I swim in the Ohio River someday.
Hey, it's better than the Olympic swim at the triathlon this year.
It could always be worse, right? So anyhow, then after I got that done, I had a goal, like, I'm going to run a mile. One of those miles, I'm going to hit the 8 minutes somewhere. I don't care if it's 8 minutes and 59 seconds, but one of my miles is going to be in the 8 minutes. Yeah. And so I did. I think I averaged about like a 8:50 pace for that whole race. I was like, whoa, I never thought I could do that. And we keep moving along. I ended up doing my first Olympic distance in Chicago, the Chicago Marathon, which is just awesome. If there's anybody out there looking for a fun destination, short race to do, highly recommend it. 4,000 people. The bikes down Lakeshore Drive. You go under the city. The runs along the Lake Michigan. It's just really cool. But anyhow, I get done with that, and I'm like, man, I got more in the tank. So then I signed up for my first half Ironman.
Oh, great.
And that got canceled in 2020 with the COVID virus.
Yeah.
That was pretty disappointing. But then in 2021, I ended up going to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I did my first 73. Okay. And I remember getting done with that, thinking, never again. That's it. Heat index 90 degrees. What were you thinking? This was just absolutely crazy. And 4 days later, I signed up for Ironman Texas.
That's awesome.
So,
and you've done Ironman Texas twice now. One was not as good as the other. What happened? How has your Ironman journey been for you?
Yeah, so did the first Ironman 2022. That will always be known for excessive winds. There's always great winds there they call it the party on the Hardy. And for 40 miles, we were in sustained winds of 25 miles per hour and gust up to 40. And that was never no fun biking into that. But when we got the wind at our back, that was awesome. So, yeah, great experience. And then in 2024, I had a friend who was going to do his first triathlon. And he said he's going to go to Texas. So I said I'd go with him. And in the process of training, I tore my meniscus in October. And then in December, it got to the point I was limping for 2 weeks. So I went in, and I believe it was December 28th of 2023. I had my meniscus shaved out.
Okay.
They went in, pretty simple procedure, went in and shaved it out.
Yeah.
And yeah, we talked to the surgeon who did the procedure. He was awesome. And he said, hey, come back, see me in 10 days. And if it looks good, I'll clear you. You can continue to try to get to Ironman Texas here in 90 days if you want.
Right.
I don't know if I recommend it, but you go at your own pace.
Yeah.
So he cleared me in 10 days. I actually was back in the pool, I think, in 8 days.
Okay.
I didn't run on it, though. But and we started training and went to the race. And, yeah, probably around on the bike around maybe between 80, 90 miles, somewhere around there, I started cramping up in my leg pretty bad, probably from the surgery, not healed, and ended up doing that entire marathon with a Charlie horse on my right calf.
Okay.
I had to walk the whole thing, but it was one of those things where we're going to get to the finish line, and what we can, one more step. We got one more step, and we just kept that mentality going. And I knew I was going to hit the goals I had to hit that day, but now it was time to just, well, you know what? I'm just ready for this Charlie horse to give, and maybe if I keep moving, it's going to release. And I don't think it released till about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock the next morning. It was a rough night.
But that showed you one of those things where you can, persevere over a setback, that maybe you can do an Ultraman, because there's going to be a lot of those things that happen, whether it's your nutrition or an injury or a mechanical, and you've got that tenacity to kind of work through it. I guess then that gave you a little bit more of that idea of, okay, well, maybe I can do this Ultraman thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I was training for Ironman 2024, the Ultraman Arizona, it showed up in my feed on YouTube. And I remember seeing it thinking, whoa, I don't know if I could do that one. Mm-hmm. And I kept coming back to like, holy cow, like this is just, people are doing this. Like, could you do this? And I just kept going back and forth. And then I started playing the percentage game. I bet an 80% chance I could do it, but I don't know. And then finally I get to a point when I have choices or decisions or ideas like this in life, I ask myself this question: if I'm given the grace to live to be in my mid 70s, late 80s, whatever, will I look back on this and regret not trying it? Yeah. And if the answer is yes, I go for it. If the answer is I probably don't, that ain't gonna bother me, then I'm gonna let that slide. Right. And I think of like the Barclays. That's a race where when I'm 85 years old, I don't think I'm going to regret not trying that thing. I highly enjoy watching the athletes that do it. I mean, it's so inspiring, and it's a whole next level. But but this was the race where I was like, no, I would regret this. And so I reached out to Jen, the race director, and I don't have a lot of ultra experience other than a couple Ironman. My swim I did the race Escape from Alcatraz in 2023 in California, San Francisco. Yeah. And that swim in the Pacific was, I believe that day it was around 57-degree water, and that was a rough swim. And I had the confidence, okay, I can handle the swim. After swimming that, there's probably not a lot I'd probably be afraid to swim. But so again, building little steps, it's the little steps that sort of create the big picture at the end of the day, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And so are you saying that you feel like you're well prepared for the race at this time? Like, is there one part of it that scares you? Like, is it you swim, you sound like you're confident, maybe the long bike ride day or the double marathon? Have you ever run the distance?
Yeah, I have never, the farthest I've ran is 26 and a half miles.
Okay.
So that's my farthest journey. So what I enjoy about these races is what leads up to the race. I like the process. I like the mental roadblocks I create in my own head that I can break down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in this one in particular, I reached out to someone who did Ultraman Florida right when I started training. And he told me about the training plan he used. He was so helpful.
Who was that?
Awesome. Matthew Tomes. He's from New Hampshire.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I pronounced his last name right. If not, I apologize. But yeah, awesome guy. I mean, as I got to know him, obviously our communication was via social media, and it was based on Ultraman. But then over the last 4.5 months, he and I have built a pretty cool friendship. And I mean, we've shared books, we've shared movies. He's some big things going on in his life, and it's just he's so helpful. I mean, he actually sent me his neoprene cap that he wore at Florida, along with his booties. He's like, "Oh well, hey, if you need them, great. If you don't need them, great. But don't go buy them just for one race. And when you're done, just mail them back to me." I mean, just to give that ohana,
Yes.
Yeah. So I followed his plan for about the first 10 weeks of training. And it was more of that low zone 1 training plan, long days, 8-9 hour bike rides. And I got to a point one week where I was just mentally, I was broken. Like I got on my bike and I had a 9-hour bike ride plan, and I couldn't bring myself to just push down the pedal. And I'm sitting here thinking, this is ridiculous. Like, you can at least ride this bike for 5 minutes. What are you doing? I was just mentally like, man, I was broke. Mm-hmm. And back in, I think, around December, Stephen Keller, he put out something on Instagram. Hey, who's all going to Arizona? Or let's start talking or something like that. So I responded to him. Yeah. So back in December, he and we started talking. And I didn't really research him. I didn't know who Stephen was.
He's got a little bit of a name in the area. Yeah.
He knows what he's doing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And so anyhow, so I'm just talking. I'm asking basic questions. Hey, yeah, like on the nutrition questions. Like, here's what I did in Ironman. I'm thinking about extending it here at Ultraman. And he's very helpful and doesn't ever come across like, hey, let me coach you. Nothing. I mean, just he was talking to me like a friend.
Right.
And so then when I hit this wall, I just text him on Instagram, and I said, hey, I'm curious, how many 9-hour rides do you do to prepare for this race? And he's like, honestly, 0. And I said, okay, you think? And I was like, that's good enough to get. I mean, we can get to the finish line. Like, he's like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I usually win these things. I said, okay, Stephen, who are you? Let's talk. So he and I started messaging back and forth all day. Well, not all day, but for the next 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, listen. He goes, if you want, I'll step in. I'll coach you here for the last 2 months. He's like, if that's what you want, and we'll get you to the finish line. And so he's like, I want you to take the next 2 days off, get your head cleared, and we'll do this. And I said, all right. And so, so over the last 2 months, and then after that, I was like, who is this guy? Like, I'm going to see who my coach is. And I saw last year he runs the double marathon, I think in Arizona at like 6:33. I'm like, oh boy, yeah, I'm in good hands.
Yeah.
And so, he's definitely, he got me mentally fresh. I think that the physical side of it, I had a pretty strong base. He was pretty impressed with where I was at as far as, my endurance and that, and then the mindset.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of good stuff going into it. And yeah, no question though, like Matthew, huge, Steven, huge. Without these two guys, I probably would have, begged for my refund back from Jen.
Yeah, you might have been up the creek on that one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
well, yes. Yeah, Steve's a great guy. He is one of those guys that goes out there and puts his all into these races, but also gives all back as well. So you're in great hands with Steve.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I look forward to even throughout this race, after this race. I mean, I feel like, in the ultra world, I'm sort of new to this, and I know that not sure when I would do another one, if I would, but I do know I'd love to go back and crew. I mean, I love the environment, and like you said, it's to give back to. It's just being gratitude, sort of weaving back and forth here between Ultraman and what I learned from my incarceration to today. But yeah, gratitude is one of the biggest, most important things to me in my life. And the farther I dig deeper into or swim in this pool of gratitude, I mean, the farther I get down my recovery road, the more I just realize how great life is and what a gift it is. And it's huge. Yeah. We can't give back enough.
And obviously that is something that you believe and live, because you have set up this nonprofit where you use triathlon to help others with recovery from their issues, build some healthier habits and maintain their sobriety. So maybe you can tell us about your Tri Recovery program.
Yeah, hey, I would love to. Thank you. Yeah, so Tri Recovery, this is something where I knew what worked for me. When I tried to get sober, I tried several different things, whether it was religions, plural, whether it was trying to work harder, work longer, whatever. Things didn't work. When I went for a run, that did work. So I thought, maybe there's people out there who are in the same boat that I am, and it's just another tool. So we started this non-for-profit, Tri Recovery, Tri as in triathlon, sort of a play on words right there. And we focus on the biological side of one's recovery. And through resilience, through doing things that aren't always the most easiest, we believe that will translate into your personal life. And that's one of the things I learned in the sport of triathlon. It was about 2 years after I was sober and doing these. It crossed my mind one morning. It was in January. Like, if I can jump in a pool at 5 a.m. on a January morning in Indiana and go for a mile swim, I can walk away from that beer. And I realized something that I was lacking in my life is self-discipline. And it was like the sport creates a discipline in you. Right. And there's transformation that takes place when you can see maybe some physical transformation take place, but the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, you don't see that right away. But when you look back on things and you're starting to see progress in your life and your personal growth, it's like, holy cow, look what the sport's doing for you. So that's why we started Tri Recovery. I am a big believer. Our message is this: our goal is to be a little bit better today than what we were yesterday. Right. And when you get to the end of 365 days, that little bit adds up to be a whole lot. It's a whole new person, Yeah. And our program is based on a reward system. Actually, this winter, I wrote some curriculum for our program, and with the help of a past college professor and my partner, Joni, we put this curriculum together. It's actually the process of getting published this week. We'll be picking it up here on Friday. Oh, great. And it's a really cool, I'll send you a journal once we get it. So after this, I'll get your contact and address. I'd like to send you a journal. But what we do is we want to see people work on their personal lives and get a little further down this road in their recovery. And we do that by all of our meetings. It's an outdoor meeting. We meet once a week. And regardless of what the weather is, we meet. Okay. It can be 20 degrees and snowing, we're going to meet. You don't have to show up if you don't want to, but again, it's that, hey, if I can walk, a mile, and that's what we do, we walk a mile, and we talk about wherever we're at in our recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can do that in this kind of weather, hey, you know what? When that situation presents itself for me to relapse or something like that, hey, I can pull from this over here. Like, hey, I did this. That was tough.
Yeah.
I don't have to do this.
You're just building up that little bit of grit each time you go out and have one of your meetings and experience something new, that you get that self-determination of, okay, I can overcome this.
Yeah. And, we have a reward system built into our program for 1 year. And, the first time somebody comes to a meeting, we issue them a wristband, sort of like symbolic as far as, hey, you belong. You're not alone. The second time somebody comes to our meeting, we have a water bottle. And again, if that's symbolic as far as gratitude, I am a believer the greatest gift you can give another human being is clean water. I think it's so important, and it's something I think we here in America take for granted every day.
Right.
I mean, just how important clean water is. And so, again, it's those simple things, right?
Yeah.
And then the third time they come to our meeting, we issue a T-shirt, and being part of the endurance sports, triathlon community, I like a good T-shirt. I don't want one of those bulky Hanes T-shirts. I want that nice dry fit, right?
That you wash it once and it shrinks up and
right. No, I want that T-shirt. If I'm doing a hard 5K or a Olympic distance triathlon, I want a good T-shirt at the end. I earned it.
Yeah.
So we have some really cool T-shirts we hand out. But again, the symbolism behind the quality of that is this. I want people to know that you're seen. We're not looking over you. We're not looking through you. We see you. We meet you right where you're at. Yeah. We are a non-faith-based organization. We have zero political affiliation with anything. I mean, we see the individual exactly right where they're at. And then our goal is for you to be a little bit better today than what you were yesterday. Yeah. And whatever we can help you do to take that next step. I mean, it's that simple. That's pretty much our mission statement.
Yeah. That 1% better kind of idea.
Yeah. And then once they get to their 90 days, we use local communities. We go to like the pizza parlors, or we'll go to the coffee shops. We get some gift certificates, and we put together a goodie bag for them, and we want them to celebrate. I mean, that's a pretty big day, 90 days of sobriety. Once they hit 6 months, we give them a choice. We've teamed up with Anytime Fitness, and they give us a 90-day membership. And so we will offer that to the participant. They have to have 6 months sobriety and be at a meeting 8 times. The reason we put the minimal on for meetings is because a little bit of accountability, but more important, if you're sober for 6 months, you got some good stuff to share with people. So I want you there. Let's give back a little bit. Like give us some gold nuggets, right?
Yeah.
They can have that, or we will pay for some of their entry fees if they want to try their first 5K, if they want to do a first sprint triathlon, if they want to do a 10K, we cover that fee. Or this is the most popular one. We issue them here in Indiana, Indiana State Park Pass. Oh. It's good for all the state park. Yeah, it's all the state parks. And, again, it's trying to help them learn how to relive. You don't have to just go to the bar. Yeah. There's life outside that bar. You don't have to be that guy that says, "Hi, my name's Andy. I've been sober for 20 years, but damn, I wish, when I hit that tree, I would have died that day. I hate my life ever since." And no, we're not created to live like that,
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do. Hey, no, let's recover. Let's not just be sober, but let's recover. And so that's 6 months. And then once they hit their 1 year mark, we issue them a $100 voucher for a pair of running shoes, hiking boots, whatever they find to be the thing that they enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's their big reward. 12 months of sobriety, 12 meetings. And we will buy them a pair of shoes. And then the cool part is this is a part of the program then where we like for them to connect with somebody who might have just got their bracelets for the first time and walk with them for the next year.
Yeah.
And so we build community. We understand we're all in this together, and I'm a big believer that our past doesn't have to define us, but I do believe it will make us.
Yeah.
And the cool part is we get to choose how it makes us.
Well, you're going to fit in just fine with the Ohana of the Ultraman world because, you know, all of those things that you've just been saying are exactly what you're going to experience when you get to this race, and the giving back and the helping, which you've already experienced with the other racers that have stepped up for you and helped you with your training and stuff. And yeah, it sounds like the two families that you have going right now are pretty much running side by side.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. You know, like I said, you know, at the beginning of the conversation, my crew that I'm taking with me, everybody on this crew has been there in my life for.
Yeah, please introduce your crew so that we get to know them as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. So 15 this year, this will be 15 years from the day we went to Haiti. And so the journey is sort of, again, a little symbolic, right?
Yeah.
So my kayaker is my best friend, business partner. His name's Matt Reinhard. He has several different businesses. He awesome guy. We've gone through life together, and it's not always been pretty. But I always say, you know, he's always been sort of my kayaker on the rough seas, and he kept me from drowning. So I thought, you know, we've done a lot of good kayak fishing trips together. And it's like, I couldn't think of a better guy. I'd went out there in that water with me, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So he's my kayaker. And then John Hirely, again, he, a couple businesses. He's a businessman, and he is the guy who's walked with me since Haiti, and he's helped me really fix my life. So I asked him to be my crew chief. That way, he's a mechanic thinking kind of a guy. If anything goes wrong with my bike, I'm sure he's got that handled. And so he fits that role really well. And then Kent Ringer, he is the pastor, and he's going to be my navigator. Okay. And as we're driving and he's doing we had breakfast actually yesterday morning, John and him. And he showed up with his file. He's got everything printed out. And
that's the guy you need.
That's what I need. Yeah, he's got all the gas stations figured out to where we can get some Pop-Tarts if we need them. And
that's the perfect logistics guy.
Yeah. And again, personally, just in my personal life, he's been my navigator too, where, hey, when there's parts of my time or parts of my life where it's like, hey, I'm lost. Like, I don't know where I'm going. Yeah. He's the guy that held me there. Yeah. And then, I've got my girlfriend, Joni Peacher. She and I met 3 years ago, and we do a couple food trucks together. And I've been dating 3 years, and she's just a great life partner. And she'll be taking care of all my day-to-day nutrition, making sure we got all that. She's a phenomenal cook. So I got some warm meals, I think, on the bike she's going to have prepared. And she'll be there. And John's wife, Liz, she's going with him, and great family friends. She'll be one of my pacers, to where she'll help keep me moving when I want to probably do some walking.
Yeah, that's good.
And then finally, probably my saving grace throughout my entire life. And when she said that she would go, it made this whole thing whole for me, and that's my daughter. Okay. Andy Yergler's her name. 18 years old. I think someday she will be in Ironman herself. She is a female version of her dad. She's got a very strong personality, very determined. She just graduated here this year from high school, and I couldn't be more thrilled that she's going along with the trip. I have two other children, two sons, and they're not going to be able to make it on the trip with me, but they'll definitely be there in my mind all 3 days.
Yeah, it sounds like you're bringing the whole journey of your life into this race, and that's going to make it very special for you to be able to bring all of these people along with you and experience it, because they will experience it just as much as you do. Like they are going to be as invested as you are in this, getting you to that finish line, and it's going to be one of those bonding moments, I think, to really bring together this group that you've been describing. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. And again, it's personal. And like I said, it's for me, it's, it's one of those things where they might not be the most advanced crew people out there, but for me, they're the perfect crew in that they all know what I need to hear, when I need to hear it, what not to say. And, yeah, I'm excited.
And my advice to you would be to make sure that they know that they can reach out to all of the other crews as well. Like if there is something that they don't know what to do or how to do it or anything like that, all the other crews are there to help each other out. So figure out who are the more experienced crews when you get there, and don't be afraid to call them on the phone and stuff like that. They'll support your crew as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Andy, listen, I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast and telling us this, very interesting story. I'm invested now. I want to see this group of yours get through this race. So I'll be following along. And congratulations on your sobriety and how that has brought you to where you are today. And I have no doubt that you will have the tenacity and the grit to get to that finish line. So good luck with the race, and I'm really looking forward to watching you do it.
Well, hey, thank you, Larry. And again, just thanks for the exposure to this Ohana family. And again, I'm beyond humbled to be able to sit down and talk with you, and the connections that you provide us with. And this experience has been far greater than I ever experienced or ever thought it would be. So thank you.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you very much.
Here we go. We're ready or not.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.